So, welcome back. I just talked about Agent Steel's first three releases, which were Skeptic Apocalypse, Mad Locust Rising EP, and of course, Unstoppable Force, but I did mention a fourth video, and this is that fourth video where I was going to talk about one band. This is the only release they had released in 1985. This is also their only 80s release. They did record something after this, but it wouldn't be released until like 98. But this is Slauter Xstroyes, which is, you know, I talked about Sabotage, Fate's Warning, and Queensryche when it came to progressive metal, but there was one band that kind of really were a part of that progressive metal scene. At least when it comes to shaping the sound that would be, you know, progressive metal or even mixing power metal with progressive metal, and that was Slauter Xstroyes. This band were really a bit of ahead of their time if you really listen to this album, and by the time this was released, it was just like, Spectre Within, I don't think, was even released yet, even though it was being thing was recorded already, but when it comes to both, this is a different beast of its own. It shares the same, sort of idea at times of Spectre Within, but it's a bit more raw and a bit more in your face. And that's one thing about this album. This is a bit of a visceral album in ways, and definitely in its approach, and at times it's a bit uneasy due to, at least when it comes to either two or one track on this album. Of course, also, one of the key parts for this album is also with bass player Brent Sullivan and Paul Kratke, who is the guitar player. Brent Sullivan provides a lot of odd bass lines on this album. That's definitely one thing that a lot of progressive rock bands were able to do, was add a lot of weird time signatures, whatever time stuff. But with Brent Sullivan, his bass playing at times can be go back to like Geddy Lee of Rush, and definitely there is some Rush influence on here, but it's definitely mixed with the more of that aggressive power metal that was being around this time. This is just an odd album in some places, but that's what gives this album its charm, especially with Winter Kill, which is the title track of the album, and it definitely kicks off the album. You just get that sort of keyboard kind of like synth sound that just starts before going into the riff, which is kind of slow. But then it just starts moving into more forward. But again, as the song goes on, riff progressions, whatever. We also got to start to hear the singer, which his name is Jon Stewart. Not to be confused with the former host of The Daily Show. But that'd be funny. That'd be really funny. But no. Definitely different, all around different guy. But this guy's range throughout this whole fucking album is... holy shit, this guy has a range. Going from melodic, sort of operatic parts, at times kind of reminding me a little bit of Mark Shelton of Middle of the Road. And there is some similarities to Middle of the Road, but at times even to Warlord as well. But as the song progresses, it goes from melodic moments to just real heavy moments. But again, this isn't the only song on here. You also get No Idea, which starts off with acoustic, very soft part. And of course, we start to hear more of the range of Jon Stewart. His singing on this song is very much a more soft side before it does break into a very good track as well. Definitely good rocker as well, but still, again, progressive as well. But then we get to the stage. This track pretty much just fucking throws you into a stage. This is like walking into a whole nother fucking realm. Just the way this is just coming in from just this is what makes this bit more proggy on here, why it kind of really adds more of that prog rock aesthetic. Is definitely also with this song is just, you just have to listen to this track just to actually really get the feel of what I'm really saying, because this is just something that throws you, it throws you pretty much on the ground. Then you get City of Sertal, which just starts off kind of very melodic, but also kind of upbeat a bit. It's kind of, it feels, again, kind of really adding in more of that progressive rock aesthetic. Of course, you, before this song breaks into fucking heavy, aggressive moments. This is just really combining more of that power metal with progressive rock, and it actually does it in a very good way. This is another solid song. Again, it just even ends on a real soft moment as well. This is fucking killer. And of course, you hear more of Brent Sullivan's bass lines, of which also through this album, you really can hear his bass. And the production for this album is also very raw, but it kind of giving it more of a garage feel. But this isn't just your typical garage rock band. This does have like some again, it's a very raw production. At times kind of giving it more of a demo sound, but it doesn't sound, for even a demo, this sounds very well produced. But you can definitely hear his bass because of he's just fucking beating on it with abuse, pain, and pleasure. But he does bring in some very odd bass lines throughout this track as well. At times it almost sounds like there's a Hammond organ in there, but that's because of his bass tone and his the effects he's adding onto it. It almost sounds like there's a Hammond organ being played behind it, almost very Deep Purple-ish sounding. But again, this is another killer track. And of course we got Charlotte, which starts off with a backmask track. Now, I had talked about a backmask track on this, with this channel, and I said I was gonna, I didn't do a reverse, but I finally for this track did a reverse, and I actually wrote down what it says. And this is what it says. Slauter Xstroyes says, Jesus is the way, beware of evil in its many forms and shapes. Now, that sounds like there's a Christian tone to it. But once you really start to read the lyrics while listening to this track, even though after that it goes into a keyboard, synth sound, again, the progginess of this band. But as the song progresses alongside the lyrics, maybe it just makes sense with the way that they came up with their name, because obviously the band were doing a lot of drugs for this, which is the case with most progressive rock bands. So, again, they were just like shouting Slaughter Destroyer, Saw Destroyer, then they just upon Slaughter Xstroyes. Again, the drug-induced state that they were in. So, of course, this song, this is pretty much progressive rock all the way. This is like even at times kind of reminding me a little bit of the Pink Floyd lyrics at times. This is fucking disturbing in some ways, and that's kind of the uneasy feeling you get with this album at times. And we'll get to another track that does have some disturbing stuff to it behind it. But that's the charm behind this album. And of course you get Black Rose and Thorns, which is it's probably not the greatest track off the sound, but it still is good. It still does its job. It still has its feeling to it. So again, keeping in line with this album, but it flows nicely. It doesn't hurt the album. It just flows on nicely until you get to the last track, which has I've talked about songs in there that has a very vulgar attack to it, especially. And it's evident with this name, and it just throws it right at you. And just spat, because that's what this song already does at you just by you look at the track. It's titled Motherfucker. Again, many bands have always have kind of pushed the limits when it comes to profanity. Like with Accept with Son of a Bitch. But this track, this is definitely probably next to Charlotte as kind of but it's a bit of, there's a charm behind it, but it's definitely kind of an uneasy feeling track. And the song, the way it goes on, it fits the lyrics nicely. It just paints a picture but it kind of paints the kind of scene of what the song is going through. It's like somebody going through a relationship, but going through the emotions as well of a relationship. But it seems like this person has a bit of a sick mind at some ways. It almost like this guy just has something going on with him, and of course. But as the song goes on, again, you get some riff progression, but there's a certain part of the song where it just goes and breaks an aggressive power metal, or it just literally just fucking gets aggressive, but with the lyrics as well, it just makes sense. It's like an underrated movie, practically, with some of this album. It's like it's a underrated classic that doesn't seem to get a whole lot of appreciation. And of course, it's the song that ends the album, and it's done on a good note. And of course, Paul Kratky does some good, guitar solos here and there. Very more rock, and again, more progressive rock at times. Even during I can't remember when. I think it was Black Rose and Thorns or Charlotte. That where he just like fucking shreds a bit on one part, and then him and Brett Sullivan provide some kind of guitar duos, whatever, between them. But you also have Dave Bono, which of course within Winter Kill, he does provides a little bit of drum solos, giving it more of that progressive rock feeling. Overall, this is actually a fucking gem. This is a gem of an album. This is, when I say that this band seems to be a bit ahead of its time, you bet your ass that I actually do mean this. They're different from Fates Warning. They have the same idea as Fates Warning, like, combining the aggressive metal that was being, that was coming out at the time, but mixing it with more of with a progressive rock sound, with the likes of Yes, or even like Rush, or maybe Pink Floyd or something. They're just kind of, even though this is at times, I thought I remember hearing that Winter Kill was also a bit of a conceptual album. I have no clue. It might be with the way the lyrics and everything seems to go. It seems like there is some sort of that, but again, or like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, again, it's like they're taking their love of progressive rock, like even King Crimson, but mixing it with metal. And this is a metal album, and it's just done in a very raw, visceral way. At times, there's even some epic metal moments, like at times kind of similar to like Omen or Middle Road. But even Middle Road kind of start off as a very kind of a progressive, sort of like a psychedelic rock band in their early career. But again, Slaughter Xstroyes kind of takes a bit of those ideas and aesthetic, but kind of just mixing it within their sound, kind of making something completely unique and something very original and very much their own. Overall, this is just a fantastic album. If you haven't heard it, which you probably should, but I also have to warn you, this album isn't an easy album to get. It's a hard album to even obtain physically. I tried looking for a copy that's actually for a decent price, but you can't. This album, the original pressing, of course, which was released independently, goes for quite a bit these days. But again, like I said, this isn't an easy album. This album, again, the independent pressing, it's gonna cost you probably an arm and a leg. But even this album was reissued through like Monster Records back in the 90s, late 90s. That copy is still fucking expensive. And of course, it was released through Forge and Fire, which was, of course, Rockerdrome's label, and which Rockerdrome were originally Monster Records. That copy, which has bonus tracks and a video that's tacked onto the disc, is also out of print. And I've seen that album go for quite a bit. So all I can say is, if you really haven't heard this album and are actually intrigued by my words and actually want to check it out, I'll actually post a link to the full upload of this album in the video so you can check out the album. I did, though, download that full video and actually split the track so I can be able to put onto a disc, and so I don't have to fucking pay so much for it. Because, really, I think this sound deserves to be in print again, because this is a fucking good album. Good albums deserve to be in print, not out of print. People, I would rather make a petition to try and put this album back in print. Because it's a fucking good album, I want to at least obtain a real, legit, physical copy of this album. This is fucking good. With that, good album, nonetheless. If I really, this is the only time I'm actually going to push for a score. And I haven't done a score for many of these videos. I haven't. Because at times I kind of feel it's unnecessary to add a score to a classic or just a very, album that was released years ago. But I'm actually going to give this a solid 9 out of 10. Or 9.5 out of 10. You know, I have talked about an obscure metal release, which is Taste of Iron. I wasn't too impressed. But this sound is fucking impressive. This is actually one of the few rare obscure metal releases that actually is very redeemable when it comes to sound, where it actually does hold a really good quality writing and just overall attitude. This is something that's very much worth listening to. Even if you think that this might be overrated nowadays, it still has every right to be given the rating that it is given. It just feels very, very original and just all around natural. It doesn't feel forced or anything. There's just something about this that feels so different from even other progressive metal bands. This is definitely early progressive metal, but done very well. And if you are a progressive metal fan and have not checked this album out, I definitely recommend checking this album out. If you like Fate's Warning, especially the early stuff, even the metal days with Night on Brocken or maybe Spectre Within, up to No Exit, you dig it. You definitely dig this album. Definitely. I've went on. I can't praise this album enough. This is a fucking killer album. So until then, this is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out, and definitely check this band out. Definitely do. I definitely recommend it, but just listen to it online first. You don't need, I'll say this for every album, even if it's shit, don't, give your arm and a leg for an album. No, it's not worth it. Even if this album is that good, it's not worth the money that's being, forked out for. It doesn't need to. I encourage many people not to buy albums that are very expensive. You don't need to be the people like on the fucking Colosseum. You don't have to. So, until then, I rambled, but I am finally done with this video. Later.